Okay, perfect. So, good morning once again, everyone. Yesterday we had just a brief background about what different body fluids are, including blood, then what are the components of the blood, and we saw the other body fluids in terms of circulating as well as non-circulating body fluids. And we had started looking at the red blood cell as one of the major component of the blood. Now we will start with the next component of the blood, that is WBC, that is white blood cells. But before I go on, I felt that you might have few more questions related to yesterday's topic. So if someone has some question, we can discuss it. Otherwise, we'll continue. Does anyone have any question? Like we had quite a few already, but still, if anyone wants to ask any question related to the yesterday's topic. Okay, so I assume there are no questions, but yeah, if at all you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So, these white blood cells in general, they are also called as leukocytes. Remember, there is something later which we'll see, that is lymphocytes, which is here written at the end, the last point. That one is different, that is a subtype of your leukocyte. Leukocytes in general refers to your white blood cells, or they are also called as white corpuscle. Corpuscle is nothing but the cells, and because they are white in like their shape, the color, that's why they are WBCs. And one of the cellular component of the blood that obviously lacks hemoglobin. There is no function of hemoglobin. This point itself is like doesn't make much value as such. But yeah, so these are the WBCs, also called as leukocyte. The drastic difference between RBC and WBC: RBC does not have nucleus, and white blood cells, they have a nucleus. Now if at all you have to remember these facts in the like let's say during the exam or during your preparation, simply imagine RBCs, they only function as a carrier. They are not having any nucleus. So the moment they function only as a carrier, they did not have any nucleus as such. So that way you can remember. And while on the other hand, WBCs, they do quite a lot of functions, like for example defending the body against any infection. For there they need quite a lot of proteins and genes and enzymes and so on. So that way they will obviously need a nucleus. uh, WBCs, they are capable of motility. That means on their own they can be a motile cell. And the simplest example that you would know of is like macrophages, right? Macrophages are these amoeba like amoeba shaped cells, which is like irregular shaped cells. Based on the pathogen, they kind of engulf the pathogen. So that we'll see further. But the point that I want to make here is they are capable of motility. That means they are able to move on their own. While on contrary, RBCs, they are not able to do that on their own. They flow with the blood. WBCs also flow with the blood, but they are also capable of moving on their own, capable of motility. And they defend the body against infection or any disease by ingesting the foreign material. And this foreign material can be simple antigen or can be whole of the organism itself, and the cellular debris from the other foreign organisms, and by destroying the infectious agents, so like a virus particle and so on, and also the cancer cells. So the WBCs, they have the ability to uh, like kill the cancer cells as well, or by producing antibodies. That is one of the very important function of this WBCs, that is they will produce the antibodies against a particular pathogen. So there are several such functions, and they can be separately classified based on what type of WBC we are talking of. That we will see in one of the chart later. Now, so that was the overall function. So this number of WBCs, like we had seen, the ratio was 1:600. That is RBCs, they will be 600 times higher than WBCs. and so on. So that way, the number of WBCs will be 4,500 to 11,000 WBCs per cubic millimeter. That is, in 1 ml of the blood, you will find these 4,500 to 11,000 WBCs. And at the same time, if you multiply this factor by 600, then you will get the number of RBCs. So they are like that drastically higher in number. In case of general infections, like let's say you get a common cold or bacterial infection, or your blood has a lot of bacteria and so on, in those cases this number increases drastically. And that is what is one of the indication that your body or you as a individual is having certain kind of infection if the number is higher than what is the normal range. So whenever you go to a physician or a doctor, and let's say you have a kind of flu or malaria type of disease, doctor usually recommend the blood test, right? The reason being to check these different types of WBC and their count, and which number has increased. Based on that, they can identify probably this is the kind of infection that this person is undergoing through. So that way, these numbers, they are very, very significant in the human being. Now, an abnormal increase in white cell number is what is known as leukocytosis. So abnormal increase in, like I said, in case of infection, there is the increased number of WBC, that is known as leukocytosis. While on the other hand, if the number is decreased drastically, that is abnormal decrease in the number, is known as leukopenia. So leukopenia is quite commonly observed in people who have low immunity, right? Or in, for example, the patients who are suffering because of the HIV infection, that is human immunodeficiency virus. These HIV virus will go and attack or go and multiply in the WBCs, and because of that, these WBCs, they burst, and then the more and more virus particles they are released. So the number of WBCs ultimately is reduced. Now I am using general terminology here, but HIV virus specifically infects the T lymphocyte. But I'm just using for your understanding a general term, that is WBC. So increase in WBC number is leukocytosis, decrease in WBC number is leukopenia. And you can also find a little variation of lower values. They are often during rest and higher values during exercise. If you are doing rigorous exercise, that there is a lot of wear and tear of the muscle cells or even regular body cells, and those cells, they need to be taken care of in terms of their breakdown completely. So that is also done by WBCs, and that is when you will see a little higher volume. Now you may not see much difference, like you may not get like double of these 11,000 or so. Slightly increased number can happen in case of exercise, like rigorous exercise, or if you are resting throughout your life, which is impossible. But that lower values can also be obtained because there is less wear and tear of the cells, and again that way the WBCs are not required much. So this is the with respect to number of WBCs. And in general, the WBCs, they are actually grouped into two main types. That is what we call as granulocytes and agranulocyte. But here it is specifically mentioned as three major classes. We now it depends on what kind of classification we want to look at. The granulocyte and agranulocyte type of classification is more universally acceptable because one contains certain granule and the other one does not contain certain, and that is simplified version of it. But another version that is there is the classification into lymphocytes, then granulocytes and monocytes. So these are the three different classes. Now, if we look at this particular classification, like I said, universally acceptable one is the granulocyte and agranulocyte, and then there are subtypes of them. So for example, granulocytes, that mean granule containing WBCs. They are of three types: neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. And they have a specific function. All of them, they do not take part in all the functions in terms of infection. They have specific function. So for example, neutrophil, which is one of the type of granulocyte, helps in phagocytosis. Now, I guess some time back we had like defined this what phagocytosis is. It is nothing but the engulfing the pathogen or bacteria or virus, right? A disease causing bacteria or virus. These are being engulfed, that means eaten up by the neutrophil cells. That is, and the process by which it happens is phagocytosis. It's literally this neutrophil, they will go and like enclose the pathogen by their pseudopod like mechanism. They will take it inside, the lysozymes will be released on that particular pathogen, and because of the different enzymes and so on, those virus or bacterial particles, they will be broken down completely.
Uh, Sachin sir,
Yes.
in these subcategories, do we have to know them?
Yes. So you will have to remember at least the major part, what are the different types and their individual functions. So that way it is there as a part of syllabus. So that is the first type, neutrophil. Then eosinophil, that is the second type, which actually fights against the parasitic infection. So whenever there are systemic infection, that means in the blood there is infection, and these cells or the bacterial or viral cells, they are parasitic in nature. These eosinophils, they fight against them. And the basophils, they are responsible for producing inflammatory and allergic reaction. So you say like, I have allergic reaction for so and so pollen grains or dust and whatsoever, right? Those kind of allergies, or even in case of bacterial or viral infection, if there is some kind of allergy being developed, that is because of the basophil WBC or basophil type of WBC. So these are the three granulocytes. Now, here one part that I have not mentioned is what these granules they are made up of, right? So there are all these three type of cells. They contain certain granules which are made up of anti-inflammatory substances or other inflammatory substances, which causes a lot of inflammation, and that way they try to uh, what we say, stop the bacteria or virus. So for example, histamine or prostaglandin or interleukin, these now you don't have to remember what are those granules and what is it made up of. But let's say there are certain inflammatory substances in your body, and they will go and accumulate next to the bacteria and virus. Then these WBCs, they will receive as it as a signal. They will go to the site of infection, and they will eat up all that bacteria or virus, and that way these inflammatory substances help in identifying a particular bacteria or virus or simply the pathogen. So that is granulocyte. Then agranulocyte, these are specifically of two types. So like I mentioned in the earlier classification, people classify it as granulocyte, then lymphocyte and monocyte. These are the three types, but you can also classify in this way, like granulocyte, agranulocyte, and then agranulocyte divided into two types, that is lymphocyte and monocyte. Now, here is one of the most interesting cell of your immune system. They are classified further into B lymphocyte and T lymphocyte. Now they are called B lymphocyte because, so both of these cells, they are synthesized in bone marrow, or they are produced in bone marrow of your bones, right? And these B stands for that bone marrow. That means this B lymphocyte, they will be produced in bone marrow, and they will mature also in bone marrow. While this T lymphocyte, they are produced in bone marrow, and this T stands for thymus, and they are matured in the thymus gland. Thymus gland is located right behind your sternum, right at the center portion of the chest, and behind the sternum, that is where this thymus gland is located. And these T lymphocytes, they mature there. So they are produced in the bone marrow. They will be carried to the thymus gland using blood or lymph, and using the thymus gland, they will attain the mature stage, and that's when they are ready to fight the infection. So that way, just the classification is based on where they are produced and where they are maturing. So B stands for bone marrow, that is production as well as maturation happens in bone marrow. T, the T lymphocyte, the production happens in bone marrow, but the maturation happens in the thymus gland. Now there is a third type which is a little less common. That means they are natural killer cell. They have the natural ability to kill certain cell. Now you might want to ask that what is the difference between all these like 6 different types, right? So this is, if we go into little detail, then we can discuss this probably. But as of now, like what we can say, the amount and the type of inflammatory substances or the mechanism by which they attack the pathogen, they are different, and that is why there are these several different types. And like I said, natural killer cells, or they are also called as NK cells, and that way they are having a different ability altogether. So that is the one another type of the lymphocyte, and these are differentiated cells. These are not like literally the subtype, but lymphocytes altogether will be composed of these 3 types. So that way we can see it. And the last one, that is the monocyte, which is another type of a granulocyte. This is again like helpful in fighting the infection in bacteria and fungi. So
So again, I'm sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
but in the agranulocytes,
Huh?
you have the subdivision like B lymphocyte, T lymphocyte, and natural killer cells.
Correct.
Do I have to remember that?
Yes, because I have seen questions in the board exam being asked based on this. So then you don't want to lose marks there. And it is not difficult. I don't know if you are finding it difficult, and that's why the question is coming to me. But it's relatively very simple. If at all you want, you can use the trick of what we called as what is it called? Using the first letters and trying to remember the whole sequence. So that way you can try and remember it, or I will also find out the ways to remember this. uh, yes, yeah. Okay, so let me just go through this information, and then we can see how difficult it is for you people to remember, and then we can discuss about it. If at all it is too difficult, then I'll try to find out some trick to remember it. So coming back to this, lymphocytes, they are divided into B and T cell that I already discussed, and they are responsible for specific recognition of foreign agent. This specific recognition is based on the antigen, whatever is present. Like let's say, for example, in the case of corona, they have specific antigen or spike protein present on the coronavirus. So that is what is specific recognition, and that is what makes your memory T cell, right? You know that a particular infection, once it has happened, your body creates a memory of it, and that memory stays like longer, so that if at all the second time infection happens, then the already created memory cells or immune cells, they will immediately produce lot of antibodies, and then the particular second time infection will be so like reduced. So that way, these specific recognition of these T cells, they help in the fighting the infection. About almost 25 to 33% of the WBCs, they are lymphocytes. So majority of the percentage is actually of the lymphocyte, where there are these B lymphocyte and T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes specifically secrete the antibodies. So antibodies will go and bind to the receptors or the antigens on the virus or bacterial surface, and then it will create an inflammatory cascade that will kill the bacteria or virus. And these antibodies are nothing but the proteins that bind to the foreign microorganism in their body tissues and then mediate their destruction. So that is the specific function of B lymphocyte, is to secrete antibodies. Now the T lymphocytes or T cells or T white blood cells, whatever you want to say, they recognize the virally infected or cancerous cells and destroy them, and they serve as the helper cells. So helper cells, so there are two types of two types of T cells. Again, this is not part of the syllabus, but just to let you know, two types of T lymphocyte, which is helper T cells and memory T cells. Helper T cells, they assist the B lymphocyte in production of antibody, right? B lymphocytes already produce antibodies, and T helper cells, they try to recognize the new virus particles and the cancer cells, and they help the B lymphocyte to produce more and more antibodies. While on the second subset of the T cell, that is memory T cell, they try to remember the particular antigen, and then when the second infection happens, that's when they help. So that way the T cells, they are classified into helper T cells and memory T cells. And natural killer cell, we already discussed that they have inherent ability to kill a variety of target cells, quite many target cells, can be self cell or the pathogens as such. And with respect to the granulocytes, the 50 to 80% of the white cells, they are neutrophils. So the major contribution within the blood is of neutrophil, and then second is of your lymphocyte, right? Lymphocyte totally refers to B and T lymphocyte. So that way, this is almost, let's say, maximum we can take 33%. On the other hand, the major volume of the cells in WBC, that is of neutrophils, and they are often the first one to arrive at the site of infection. So again, this was the question that was asked in one of the exam: which is the first type of WBC or white blood cells or immune cell which arrive at the site of infection? So whenever, let's say, you have a cut or injury, right? So from the blood, the first one that will come to the site of infection or site of injury is your neutrophil, and that way they will again engulf and follow the track of phagocytosis. So that is the neutrophil. Eosinophil and basophils, they have okay, as well as the tissue cells, you can forget this, but they have something called as mast cells. Again, this is out of syllabus, so I will not really highlight this. So let's say these, because they secrete the histamine, which is one of the inflammatory substance, that way they will arrive later. So the histamine will be accumulated, then the cells will take it as a signal, that is eosinophil and basophil, and then they will accumulate there to kill the pathogen, and that way it will cause the allergic or inflammatory response. Now, one common assumption that I have seen around the people is allergic response or inflammatory response within our body is kind of unnatural. I would say it is very natural, and we should not ideally take the medicine for allergies, right, until and unless they become severe. Of course, in case of severe allergies, we have to take medicine, then there is no option. But let's say if we are just seeing a basic allergy, like let's say I have one boil on my skin on the hand, I need not take a medicine for that. It is a natural response. Or for example, when we have common cold or common flu, now because it is the pandemic time, so people prefer to tackle that infection with certain medicine. But otherwise, even if we don't take any medicine for common cold and common flu type of diseases, there the body will already take care of uh, the symptoms. That is, for example, in common flu we have a little higher temperature, that what we call as we have a fever, but that is a normal like an inflammatory response of the body. So what happens in case of this common flu infection, the pathogenic particles, they are in our body, so they will secrete antigen. Body will try to tackle it by secreting antibodies or these anti-inflammatory substances, and that way it triggers the prostaglandin pathway. So it will go and act on the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus will increase the temperature of the body, so that these virus particles, they are kept to a minimum, because at higher temperature the bacteria and virus, they cannot survive longer. So that is one of the mechanism of the body to tackle certain infection. And then what we try to do is we try to suppress. Now I will not say in all the cases this happens, but in common flu cases, surely that is the natural course of body which tries to heal on its own. So that is how the function of this inflammation or allergic responses, they are required at times in our body. And the last type, that is the monocyte, which constitute between 4 to 8% of the total number of the white blood cells. They move from the blood to the site of infection, where they differentiate further into macrophages. Again, this was another question which was asked in the exam: which type of WBC gets converted into macrophages? So that is monocyte. So now again, if I go back to this particular diagram, neutrophil speciality, they are the first one to arrive at the site of infection. Eosinophil and basophil, they fight against the bacteria by producing different inflammatory substances, and eosinophil specifically fight against the parasitic infection. B lymphocyte produce antibodies. T lymphocyte, it produces helper or assist the B lymphocyte in production of antibodies, or they also create memory T cells. That is the memory of the infection. And natural killer cell, they have natural ability to kill this bacteria or viruses, that is the pathogens. And monocytes, these they get converted into macrophages, and then they kill the bacteria or virus through the process of phagocytosis. So these are the various types of WBC. And I have also, for your reference, you can just summarize this. So again, there have been questions being asked, which one is binucleated and trinucleated and so on, which has the bigger nucleus. So that way you can find all that basic information on this chart. I will not go into that because that will become just too much, but the basics of information that you need to remember is already there on this particular slide, and some of the points which are highlighted here. So that is the all of this you need to remember, and of course this one, like I mentioned. Okay, any questions so far, anyone? I hope that was not too much for you to remember, and like I said, I will still try to figure out how you can remember it easy.
So,
Hmm.
so can you just explain what is phagocytis again?
Okay, what is phagocytosis? So okay, let me take help of the board. So spotlight. So what usually happens is, you have this is, let's say, a macrophage or lymphocyte, or you can say just WBC. It has a nucleus. It can be of different types. So I'm not drawing. I'm just drawing a simple. So let's say this is a macrophage, and there is a specific virus particle. Yeah. So let's say this is the virus particle, and there is a macrophage. So the moment this viral particle, it is recognized by this antigen which is present on the viral particle. This antigen will be sensed by the WBC cells. They will go close vicinity to this virus particle, and what they will try to do is they will try to make a pseudocode like mechanism. Yeah, this is like they are trying to engulf that virus particle. Yeah, and they will recognize this antigen, they will bind to it. The moment it binds, and now these are like protein or biomolecular interactions, so that's where they are like kind of connecting with each other. And once this interaction has happened, this will try to take it inside. So that means in the third stage, this virus particle will be totally inside the cell. Then this cell will release the lysozyme, which has lot of what we say enzymes, breakdown enzymes specifically. So it will break down the virus particle into several parts, right? And that way the virus or bacteria gets killed. So this process of endocytosis is called as phagocytosis. Endocytosis means taking it inside and killing the bacteria, that is phagocytosis.
Okay.
Bacteria or virus.
Okay, got it.
Okay, anyone else? Any question? So I assume that this part is clear to everyone. That is different components of the blood, including your plasma, RBCs, and WBCs. Platelet we will see a little later when we learn the mechanism of clotting and so on. As of now, we will like talk of lymph, which is another like component or fluid component of the body. Now, usually, like lymph is a colorless fluid which is present in the interstitial tissue. Lymph also has its own circulatory system, like how we have blood vessels. Similarly, we have lymphatic vessels in our body, and these vessels, they are connected throughout the body, and that way they keep on exchanging the material between the interstitial space, that is the cell space in between the cells, to the lymphatic vessels. So I guess one of the video, yeah, here is one of the video that I have kept. I'm not going to show this video in the class, but you can surely watch it on your own. This video will explain you in brief how this lymphatic fluid is formed. So it's in short, like if you see this, or let me just quickly, bring that.
But really the
Yeah, for example, this particular, I hope you all can see this part. So these are the cellular spaces, right? And that is what is called as interstitial fluid. And if there is a lymphatic vessel in the vicinity, this interstitial fluid will enter into this lymphatic fluid, lymphatic vessel, and that becomes a lymph, right? So it is nothing but the interstitial fluid just entering the lymphatic vessel. And the moment I say interstitial means that is in between the cells. So the fluid which is present in between the cells, that is what will ultimately become the lymph. Composition wise, it has a specific composition which we'll see here otherwise. Okay, so so that is the lymph, which is colorless fluid present in the interstitial tissue, and it circulates through the lymphatic system. That is the, like I said, it is one of the other type of circulatory system which specifically conducts the lymph. And the function of this lymphatic system is to act as a filter against microbes, organic waste, and other debris. It can be a cellular debris. Debris means kind of waste material. So this lymphatic system is a kind of filter. So it will carry all of that which is coming from different cells in a particular area. Then it will be taken to the liver and so on, or different organs like spleen, for example. And there it will be further broken down by these cells of those particular organs. Also, it functions in the exchange of nutrients. So whatever is taken by the lymphatic system in excess, that if a particular area within the body needs it, that will be exchanged. See, one of the common assumption again is organic waste does not mean literally waste. It is still can be reused by the body. Like for example, a particular protein or let's say a particular cell is being killed. That cell has lot of protein, lot of carbohydrate and other molecules or lipid molecules and so on, right? Now these molecules, they are broken down into pieces, and let's say some other cell which is in the nearby vicinity that needs to synthesize lot of protein. So what happens is these broken down protein fragments or other cellular molecular fragments, they will be carried to the cell which is in requirement. That cell will utilize it, and then it will create its own proteins and lipids and whatsoever. So that we call as organic waste or the debris of the cell. That does not mean is a total waste. Whatever is in excess, that goes as a waste. But the in general rest, everything in our body can be reutilized. Again, simplest example is your neurotransmitters like adrenaline and so on. These are always broken down and again resynthesized from those broken down materials. So that way they are never going to waste until and unless they are in super excess. But that does not really happen until and unless there are certain conditions. Sorry? Haji. Can we talk, sir, later? Okay, so sorry about that. So the exchange of nutrients, hormones and gases that can happen through this fluid. So that way, this also acts as the like kind of transport system for all of these things. And it consists of lymphocyte. Now, some of the lymphocyte that we have seen in the blood, they are present in the lymph as well. And they play a major function in the immune response of the body. So you imagine now there is a circulatory system, there is a lymphatic system. Both of them, they contain lymphocyte and both of them, they help in fighting the infection. Now, and like similar like how we have blood capillaries, we also have small lymphatic vessels, like very thin lymphatic vessels that go deeper to the tissues, and that way they can tackle the infections there as well. And in general, if we talk of this lymphatic system, it comprises of three components. Same like blood plasma, there will be lymph plasma, then lymph cells, like how we had blood cells. So these are lymph corpuscles, and the organs, like we had heart and blood vessels in the circulatory system. In lymphatic system, we have lymphoid organs, and these lymphoid organs are shown in this particular diagram. So if you know of tonsils, which is commonly known, so tonsils are usually swollen if we have some infection, or if you have any injury around the hand or around the leg. If it is around a hand, the armpit lymph nodes, they are little swollen and then it pains at the armpit area. Or even if it is in the leg region, then the lymph nodes at the groin area, these becomes swollen because they create lot of new lymphocytes, and that way they accumulate it there because most of the debris is coming to these lymph nodes, and then that is being taken care of uh, at this area, and that is why they need lot of cells, and that is why they are kind of swollen in that area. So that way, spleen is another organ. Peyer's patch is one of the organ in the like your digestive system itself. So that way we have quite a few what we say the lymph nodes or lymphatic organs, and these are present and being shown here. I guess, yeah, that's good enough for this particular lymphoid organs. So lymph plasma, majorly it consists of your calcium, few blood proteins like albumin and so on, less phosphorus compared to blood, and high glucose concentration. Again, high glucose concentration because it is directly in touch with the cells like the blood as well. And that way it also has high glucose concentration. The globulin protein, which are actual antibodies, they are found in the lymph plasma. So in the earlier case of blood, we had seen these immunoglobulins. So these are also found in the lymph plasma, that is ultimately in the lymph. And of course, whatever organic and inorganic substances which are taken from the cellular interstitial space, that will also be present in the lymph. So in short, lymph plasma consists of many ions, then proteins, and majorly these immunoglobulins, and of course these organic and inorganic substances. Lymph corpuscles, again these will be same your WBC or amoeboid cells, which are nothing but the lymphocyte cells. So there is, and again the functions will remain same to fight the against the infection, that is the lymph cells or lymph corpuscles. And the last part, that is of the lymph nodes or lymphatic organs, like there are several lymph nodes present at different areas of the body, which are even deep inside, and these lymph nodes, they are connected to each other by lymphatic vessels, and that way they keep on circulating the lymph throughout the body, and lymph gets filtered at this lymph node. So whatever debris is accumulated, it will be taken care at each lymph node, and whatever is not required, it will be again filtered to the neighboring cells as an interstitial fluid. And then again, this cycle keeps on happening. The spleen, the tonsils, adenoids, these are specifically right next to your tongue or below your nose, and the thymus, which is behind the sternum, they all form the part of lymphatic system. Spleen is apparently the largest lymphatic organ in terms of its size, and obviously then because of its function, which is located under the rib cage, above the stomach, that is on your left side, and exactly the left upper quadrant of the abdomen, that is wherever your rib cage ends, that is where this spleen is located. And the other parts, like tonsils, like I said, it's in the throat region, adenoids in the facial region behind the nose, thymus in the chest region, and that way they also function in the same way. So that is the lymph. Okay, I guess I will stop here. If there are any questions, I will take it. Otherwise, we'll stop for today, because this will be too much of content for one day. If anyone has any question or